Hello and welcome to Spotlight on College Basketball, the inaugural episode. Been together a long time, but not on this network, this platform.
Yeah,
I'm Alex Campbell here with Gerald Bentley. How are you?
great.
Great, great.
Big sports day. A little NFL talk, a little NBA, college basketball. Just got back from the season ticket holders open house for CPKC Stadium for the Kansas City Current. So ready to go, covering all the games.
Covering all the games, all the games. Yeah, and you drove by. You said the women's
Women's Big
uh,
12 tournament going on
Big
right
12
here,
tournament.
downtown Kansas City, about 15 minutes that way.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, yeah, and the conference tournament's getting started. In men's college in a week. Most of them start the 12th. We're recording the night of the 7th here, so got a pretty big weekend of college basketball. But this weekend is kind of like this the last big hurrah before the conference tournaments. So. I mean, just kind of preview some of the games that are coming up this weekend that kind of matter. You got an Ohio State Indiana matchup at 3:45 on Saturday. That's going to be pretty good. Both of those teams are kind of bubble watch teams in the Big Ten. Both could miss, but only probably one could make it. I would say. They both have bad records against the Quad One teams, and they don't boast great records overall. I think that really hurts both teams. So. You got a nice Oklahoma at Texas, 8 p.m. on Saturday. That should be a good one. Another double bubble type game where both teams are right there on the bubble. Need to win that game. It's important this is the thing. When those two football teams joined the SEC, I don't think they expected to have this much of a challenge in basketball.
No, I think they thought they were going to come walking in there from the Big 12. It just so happens they joined the SEC the year the SEC decided to spend money across the conference. And a lot of people
Yeah,
say it's the best all around conference in NCAA men's basketball history this year, which
yeah,
is a
yeah.
really bad time to move.
Yeah, exactly. They just kind of stepped in it there. But
Mhm.
nonetheless, you know, I think Texas has a little bit better chance to make it than Oklahoma. But like both of them, this would be one of those probably quad two wins if they were able to pull it off and set them up well for going to the SEC tournament. And like we've talked about for a couple weeks now, if they can win 2 or 3 games in that tournament,
Oh, yeah.
then
Huge
they could get
difference.
into the big dance. Another SEC team, Georgia against Vanderbilt on Saturday at noon. That one matters a lot for seeding in the SEC. They're pretty
Hmm.
tight in the standings there. Arkansas plays against Mississippi State, another one in the SEC. Wake Forest against Georgia Tech. There's a lot of bubble teams in the ACC. ACC's in a down year, as you know, and so as an effect, you get kind of this Wake Forest at Georgia Tech game is gonna matter a lot for the seeding in that ACC tournament. North Carolina Duke. North Carolina is going to have to basically string together a number of wins before the tournament, whatever they got left here in the season, and win 2 or 3 games in the ACC tournament to get in.
Yeah. I mean, this may be one of the least publicized, least significant Duke North Carolina games
Yeah,
since before Coach K. I mean,
I
you have to go back a long
probably probably, you know, it's a tough spot for Hubie Davis, right? A guy who has a Hall of Fame resume, and just is catching a lot of flack right now for a North Carolina team that just it's not a North Carolina like roster. They just don't have a premier. There's no Armando Bacot there this year. You know what I mean? They don't have a
time.
premier player to really hang their hat on. It's a bunch of one and dones, and they just don't have the same kind of roster that they usually do at North Carolina, and you're seeing the effect. But they'll be fine. Like they're Jordan University. Like they're going to recruit fine. Like long term they'll be fine. ACC's just having a down year. They had ACC had a down year in football too.
Hmm.
You know.
Yeah, they're finishing on an up note for North Carolina. I mean,
Yeah.
here, last 5 games, 97-73 beat down against a bad North Carolina State Wolfpack. 81-66 against Virginia, 96-85 against the Seminoles, 92-73 in a beatdown of a bad Miami team, a really bad Miami team, and
Yeah.
91-59 against a bad-ish Virginia Tech team. So they've been winning the games they're supposed to win. But yeah, you take a look at the ACC standings overall. You get past North Carolina, or you get past Wake Forest. That's probably it.
Yeah. Well, that's what
Stanford
I
at
mean.
11-8, 19-11 overall. The Ramblin' Wreck 10-9, 16-14. I mean, they're not making it.
Yeah. Virginia down this year. Notre Dame way down this year.
Mm-hmm.
Syracuse in the post Boeheim era way down. NC State way
Yep.
down. Boston College usually is better than this. Pitt is usually better than this. Virginia always better than this. So it's a funky year in college basketball. It just has been. But that said, some of the stalwarts are still there. Like Duke is great.
Mm-hmm.
Cooper Flag is great. There's a looming question over. There's a lot of talk about him staying. I would imagine there's a lot of money on the line.
Yeah. Well, supposedly $4.5 million from Duke straight
Mhm.
up, and then all the endorsement money that you can already get.
Right. And so,
Not a bad deal.
especially see in this tournament matters big time for how much money he can get. If they go on a run, let's say to the national title game, even just to get there and have him
Yeah.
put some of the numbers up that he's been putting up this season, he will become he's already a name to every college basketball fan. He will become a household name very quickly if he can make his mark on this NCAA tournament. That's coming up, and that will go. I think that's what you'll see if he blows up in the tournament and they get to, like, let's say even the Final Four, and he's the reason, because he will be, if they do, and then if that's the thing, then you'll see him probably stay next year, because I think altogether he could probably make 10-12 million dollars.
I'm sure he can. He's probably making it now.
He probably
Just
is,
off
and how much?
endorsement deals. Yeah.
I mean, that's
It's
about
a different ball game.
his NBA salary is going to be right about there on day one. You know what I mean? So, yeah, he's not going to make much more in the NBA against tougher competition. And that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. And you can't really pick and choose who you're going to get drafted by, because it is a lottery. So it's not like you're going into an NFL draft where you can go, oh man, I don't want to go to that team. I have no interest in playing in Tennessee. I'm going to stay a year. Not quite that simple.
Yeah. Well, and in the NBA too, it's even more mystifying because the picks have been traded so much, especially in this era, that, like the Thunder are the best team in the West, but they could easily end up with a top 3 pick because they have so many first round picks. They probably trade out of it, but they may not. You know what I mean? If a guy like Cooper Flag's out there, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, but I think ultimately he probably goes to the NBA.
Sure.
He probably does, because every athlete, right? You're not really worth your salt, so to say, if you're not always trying to seek the next challenge. You're not as good as Cooper Flag is if you're not trying to ascend to the top level of basketball. That has to be the overall goal, and getting there faster has to be another feather in his cap that he's pursuing. It just has to be, So, yeah, I think he goes. I know Johnny Broom goes. I know he's going. And so yeah.
Well, and you appreciate the sentiment, right? I mean, you want to say, hey, this is great. I love being in school. This is terrific. But generally speaking, the guys who stay in school are the guys who, under the current metrics, okay, you're going to make more in school. Close to me, Hunter Dickinson. There's no reason to run to the NBA. You're doing better at KU.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the NBA draft, like this year in general, is going to be a little underwhelming, I think. And you look at it, and I know this isn't the NBA show, but like college and the NBA kind of cross paths here. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how that goes. But yeah, like Broom will be probably like the highlight of the draft. And that UConn kid Caravan will be all right. You've got some bigs that are interesting. Mark Sears, the best player on Alabama, is going to get a lot of attention in the draft. And I think he'll be a steady NBA player, but he's not a wow guy. Like Sears isn't a guy who's going to come make an immediate impact. That kid who plays at Creighton, Kalkbrenner, who had a great tournament last year, big like 7'2" kid.
Mhm.
He's one of these guys that you could see like the NBA, like as good as Wembanyama is, like the NBA is kind of stockpiling some of these huge young players. Zach Edey, Chet Holmgren, now Kalkbrenner. This 7'2" and up crowd that can really, maybe we're moving back towards an era where there's a lot more action in the paint. You know what I mean? Um, so,
Well, you've opened up the paint.
yeah,
So
yeah,
somebody who can move and can create their own shot is invaluable because you got everybody else out spreading it. So you can create
right.
some more of that isolation, a little bit more pick and roll.
Yeah, like if
Yeah.
college
Huge
basketball
difference.
can birth the next Shaquille O'Neal, that guy will dominate the NBA.
Hmm.
I assure you, like, that Shaq would do more damage to the modern NBA than he did to the '90s
Oh,
NBA.
somebody who's a consistent 70% shooter down in the paint. Here, we've talked throughout the season about how limited Hunter Dickinson is. Although by some metrics he's the fourth most efficient player in college basketball this year. Hunter
Yeah,
Dickinson is 53.1% from the field. And he's just a guy.
just the
Now,
guy.
if
Yeah,
you had somebody with a little bit more athleticism and a couple of guys who can nail down threes, you got a 70% shooter in on the paint, and that's pretty darn effective.
yeah,
So, yeah,
yeah.
there's definitely a
Well,
role.
like I mentioned him before, and if we didn't have a college basketball show last year, but I would have talked about him then because I talked about him on my own college basketball show last year. Zach Edey is
Mhm.
a guy who, despite all the detractors, and I said this coming in, like he's a very efficient NBA player. He's in a nice role there in Oklahoma City, and he is a very efficient NBA player. He's if you look at his per 36, he's a guy who could really go 20 and 10 if you look at his per 36 numbers. He doesn't get that many minutes, but if you extrapolate that out to what he
Mhm.
would get as a starter, based on the minutes he is getting now, like I think he's going to be a solid rotational piece in the NBA for a long
Oh,
time.
yeah.
And then you get a guy like Kalkbrenner who, out of Creighton, who's essentially kind of the same kind of mold. He's probably a better all-around offensive player than Kalkbrenner, but Kalkbrenner is every bit as good as a rim defender, if not better. So yeah, they're kind of moving more towards college. Has got that half court game going, and it has a lot of those big, kind of older game centers. And like all the NBA can do is like what they get out of Europe and what they're going to get out of college and what they're going to get out
Mhm.
of the G League. So this is one of those main throngs, and like they're going to have to deal with it. But like this NBA draft from college again is going to be a bit of an underwhelmer, and we've had a few of those now.
Yeah, well, and you're getting to disconnect too between the style of play that you're seeing in college and the style of play that you see in the NBA. In the
Yeah.
NBA, it's pretty much everybody. We got four guys out, we got one guy in. We're going to rain threes and we'll try to DF the perimeter and let's go. Let's see who gets to 100 first. College, you still have coaches that are trying to call the plays as you go, kill the clock down, break the lanes up, control possession. I mean, I've been listening to Calvin Simpson talking about how their games went for Houston, who's locked in as a number one seed. A lot of the talk going into this Big 12 season is that this is going to be one of the most competitive conferences ever. It's going to be a bloodbath. Nobody's going to dominate it. Well, Houston dominated it, and they dominated it by maintaining possession, which you don't hear about in basketball. But Calvin Sampson talks about it a lot, that he wants to be around 70% possession, which is just crazy, but it's working. In this day and age, in 2025, they're winning games in the 50s because
Hmm.
they're taking the air out of the ball. On defense, they're really hammering the perimeter passing lanes and just making it into a street fight. They
Right.
beat KU this week by 5 points, and they turned KU over 20 times, but
Hmm.
they only converted those turnovers to 9 points because they're just not an effective offensive team. But what they do, they're really good at it, and it's a unique style that if you tried to play it in the NBA, you'd get, you know, 20 and 62. You get ran out of the gyms. But
Right.
in college, you can still do it because with NIL, with the rosters getting spread around, you're kind of seeing it in the ACC. There's just talent deficits on teams, and they don't have guys that can play that NBA style and have four guys lined up outside the arc that can rain threes down. You may have two guys that can shoot on the team, and you got two liabilities. So it's
Right.
really pulling the teams together. I think you're going to see a really exciting NCAA tournament because there's so much parity because guys have moved around so much.
Yeah, and like the best players, like the guys that you're actually going to see go high in the NBA draft, they're not on in a lot of cases premier teams. Then there's some exceptions, right? Like Flag, for instance, he's probably going to
Yeah,
be the number one. If he's in the draft, like let's say, I think the Wizards probably have the best odds to get the top pick. If the Wizards get the top pick, like they're drafting Cooper Flag. If he's in the draft, like
sure.
that's what's going to happen. There's probably you could probably pick any five teams that are going to be in the mix for that, the highest like 14.7 or whatever it is percentage in the lottery. And like they would all draft Flag, you know what I mean, at number
Hmm.
one. But then like you've got, arguably I would say you're going to get two kids out of Rutgers, who is barely going to get out of the Big Ten tournament, probably going to be in March, but like in March Madness, but they're not going to make waves in the NCAA tournament. Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, who were supposed to be, these, turning Rutgers into this world-beating, team, kind of like you talked about with all these teams in the Big 12, who's been a little bit underwhelming, but these are guys, though, if you look at both, like in the case of Harper, Harper is a guy who is a prototypical bigger but super athletic guard, kind of like a De'Aaron Fox or a Kobe White or like a Jalen Brunson. He's 6'6", 215. That's like Michael Jordan size, basically, but like a
Yeah,
guy, who can really see the floor well. And lottery teams like the Wizards and like the Pelicans and the Jazz are going to be really interested, and they'll be up there too. And then if you look at Ace Bailey's a 6'10", small forward 3-and-D guy who translates perfectly to the modern NBA. But to your point, they come from a team that isn't necessarily dominant because the way that college basketball is played, the best teams aren't generating in a lot of cases the best NBA prospects. You
yeah,
know,
because they're winning with style,
right,
and
right.
the coaches are still controlling the way the game's played, or struggling to try and control the way the game's played.
Hmm.
Whereas in the NBA, it's much more, okay, let's do what makes these players better. In the NBA, you're trying to make a system work for your players because the players aren't changing. It's
Right,
really hard to turn over an NBA roster with the way the salary caps are set up and supermax
exactly.
contracts and exclusive offers. In college, it's an extreme the other way.
Yeah,
Everybody is an unrestricted free agent every year.
every
And you
year.
have coaches trying to claim dominance on the program, saying, we play
Yeah.
this way. And you saw an extreme example of it last year, Rick Pitino at St. John's. Okay, we're going to play this way. Ugh, man, we're terrible. And Pitino came right out during a post-game press conference last year and said, okay, we're getting new players because this isn't happening again.
This is
And he
not
went out and
working.
got 9 new players, and now they're one of the best teams in the country because
Top five team.
he
Yeah.
found, instead of changing his system and adapting it around the players, he spent last year taking those round pegs and trying to jam them into the square hole all year, and it just didn't work. So this
Right.
year, he didn't change the holes. He went and got square pegs to jam into those square holes, and he got guys that fit his system. So you're
Exactly.
seeing some
Exactly.
disconnects in college where maybe you have one or two good players, but they're buried because the team's trying to play a certain style and the pieces just don't fit. It just isn't working.
Right. Right. Well, and like that's where like that's where I think Duke becomes the best player in the country, the best team in the country,
Yeah.
because they are built like an NBA team. They're the one team that is built like an NBA team. Point in case, I almost guarantee they will have 3 players drafted in the top 10 in the NBA draft.
Yeah.
They're the only school that will, because they translate. Cooper Flagg is a point forward. He is a point power forward in the NBA, who immediately will be able to transition into like that Jalen Johnson type role. That center they have, Malak, the kid from South Sudan, he's huge. He's like 7'2", 250. And he's getting like top 5 buzz in the draft. See, that's what I mean. Like the NBA is actually getting more stout in the paint a little as time goes on, and they're just feeding directly off of what college is doing. And then the next guy who's also going to be top 10 is Khan Napul, who again is that 3-and-D 6'6" guy who can play the 1 and the 2, hell of a playmaker, locks down defender on the perimeter. You know what I mean? That kind of prototypical, kind of like we were talking about DiVincenzo earlier. Just a very like Kevin Huerter, Dante DiVincenzo type player. But again, guys that translate to the modern NBA. You know what I mean? And they're the only team that you're going to see do that. Contribute a lot of players early in this NBA draft.
And it's not necessarily the NBA draft, like you said, isn't going to necessarily translate over to the tournament this year.
No.
Which I think will be a more entertaining tournament this year. Last year was almost a struggle to watch some of the games because you just got these just grinding, halting games with coaches trying to just dominate their will to get the team to play a style. It's led to a lot of ugly games. I mean, if you're an alum of Houston, if you're a big fan of the Houston Cougars, okay, man, you're into watching Houston
You're
Cougars
dialed
play
in.
basketball. If you're not a fan of Houston or an alum, just go ahead and watch a Houston Cougars game and see what you think of it.
Right.
See if that makes you say, "Oh man, you know what? This is exciting. It's appointment television. I need to tune this in."
Yeah, no doubt. Same thing with like Michigan State. You know what I mean? Like go ahead. I mean, if you're a Spartan fan, I'm sure and they're the best team in the Big Ten. I won't deny that. They'll probably win the tournament, but like they're not fun to. I would much rather. Now you're going to think this is a homer take because of the helmet and the football behind me. I would much rather watch Michigan play than Michigan State, because Michigan has a 7-foot point guard named Danny Wolf that they roll out there. That win or lose is a freaking blast to watch. It's like watching a young Nikola Jokic. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying he'll be Nikola Jokic, but I'm saying the skill set and the problems he creates for the defense are similar. And the other 7-footer they have, Goldislav, is like a prototypical paint guy that can also stretch it out at the perimeter and shoot threes. So like that team's a lot of fun to watch, but they're not going to win the tournament. Like Michigan is not going to get to the Final Four. They're not going to win the tournament. Michigan State has a better chance, but Michigan's more fun to watch. Duke is, like I said, Duke is the one team that is absolutely loaded with NBA style talent that, like, I think, well, and I'll throw Kentucky in there. Kentucky is too. Kentucky, for my money, is just as talented as Duke, minus maybe Cooper Flagg. But like they are, Kentucky, man, the post Calipari Kentucky team looks better than the Calipari Kentucky teams.
Yeah, and they're just kind of getting their footing under them now. That's going to be a good game. They're playing Missouri to end up the SEC regular season. Missouri, great turnaround story, but as you see behind me, they got thumped by Oklahoma 96-84, maybe Oklahoma's best win of the year, and Missouri seems to have forgotten how to play defense. If you don't like watching Houston play, watch Missouri play, because Missouri's attitude is, okay, hey, we're pretty sure we can score 100, catch us. Yeah, and they just go. There's almost no defense. It's go time.
Well, that's
they're kind of running out of gas, it looks like.
Another basketball school, more so than Missouri, Wake Forest has found themselves. they will run with just about anyone. They're athletic at all the right spots. They're good in transition. They shoot threes as good as anyone. They can't defend a lick. So, I mean, you know what I mean? So for that reason, you know what I mean? They've struggled specifically in conference, and that's why they find themselves really on the bubble and probably likely to miss the tournament unless they can do something special in the ACC tournament. Because you can't play defense. That's the one thing that like the SEC and the Big Ten teams kind of like football. It's interesting how they kind of follow that mantra. The SEC and the Big Ten teams pretty much categorically can go both ways. Like pretty much like every one of those teams can play defense and offense at a reasonable, if not high level. But it's funny.
Outside of Missouri, I'll go with that.
Outside of Missouri. Yeah, outside of Missouri. The aforementioned Missouri, who, has struggled because of that this year. In an SEC that has grown up around it to be, the preeminent basketball conference. And that's interesting, kind of, if you look at the lens of multiple seasons, how this tends to rotate. You know what I mean? It'll be the Big 12 one year, the Big 10 another year,
stronger,
the ACC another year. And I would imagine that's both good and bad for college basketball as a whole.
I mean, everything's uneven. Don't bury the Big 12 because you got the number 1 and the number 2 recruits in the country going to BYU and KU respectively next year. So the Big 12 is going to bounce back up. Hey, we mentioned bubble team, and we mentioned him a couple times. Coach Cal, John Calipari, he's got Arkansas as one of the last teams in, knocking on the door according to bracketology. They finished up their SEC regular season against Mississippi State, ranked number 25. Can Arkansas pull off the upset at home, which would let them finish in what a lot of people are saying is the best single season of a basketball conference ever? They'll move to 8-10 and 19-12 overall with John Calipari as the head coach. That's good enough to get in, isn't it?
Yeah, that'll get them in the tournament if that's how it goes down. It's just like they look a lot like a Kentucky team, right? Like they're going to go and lose to a team like South Carolina, a team they have no business losing to, and follow it up with a win against Vanderbilt, a team that honestly has played more consistent basketball than they have this year. That, to me, they're that Jekyll and Hyde type. You don't know what Vanderbilt you're going to get. So, like, I could absolutely see them running out the rest of the season and making a storm in the SEC tournament because they're that good and that well coached. I could also see them falling completely flat and not doing either and missing the tournament altogether.
Oh, yeah. They've been a team of streaks. They're not contending for anything. I don't think they're going to advance to the Sweet 16 or anything. I think they make it in
or they don't.
Second round.
Yeah. No, I agree. And there's a lot of those teams that like either make it in. And I'm telling you, one of them that we're ruling out, let's say North Carolina does make it in, right? Mm-hmm. And I said earlier, they don't have a guy. They do. RJ Davis, they do have a guy. If Davis we've seen this before. If Davis goes off and let's say averages, 28 points plus for the tournament, North Carolina is good enough in the supporting cast that they could make a run, because if you give them like an 11 seed or something like that, because they just barely squeak in, they may get some good matchups. They really might. And if that happens, one of these teams that we're writing off is going to get to the Sweet 16 probably.
What do you think North Carolina needs to get in? They're currently one of the first 4 out, along with the Oklahoma Sooners, the Texas Longhorns, and the Nebraska Cornhuskers out of the Big Ten.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious. I think it starts with Duke this weekend. I that's absolutely.
Do they need to win?
They just need to show up. Like they need to get it within 8. You know what I mean? They need to make a game of it, I think, and then have a good performance in the ACC tournament, which they're totally capable of. You know what I mean? I think that will work. If they beat Duke, they only need to win 2 games in the ACC tournament and they're in. And I think they could beat Duke. I really do. Now Duke could also house them by 30. You know what I mean? Like I don't think there's much in between. You know what I mean? I really don't. But Davis could go off. They're good enough outside of him, like I said, to compete with the best teams. And yeah, I think they could put something together, and make the tournament. I do, and because they're North Carolina too, like the selection committee is gonna want to put North Carolina in, and they're not gonna care about some other
Gives them a
teams.
push.
Yeah, they'll push
And
them
they've
for it.
been playing. They've been playing well. They're hot at the end. I mean,
Right.
if they beat, I think if they just beat Duke, they're in because
Oh,
that would
absolutely.
finishing the season with 7 straight wins in conference.
Well,
That
and
that
Duke would
do
give them
it.
the quad one win that they need.
Yeah,
Duke
huge
would get them
win.
in because it would give them the quad one win.
14-6 in the ACC. 21-11. That's got to get you in.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, they're gonna be heavily reliant on RJ Davis to make anything happen in the tournament. But yeah, they could get in. They could get in. Like Baylor could still get in. Baylor's got a lot of good players. Baylor
Mhm.
could get in. Again, same kind of thing. Huge opportunity on Saturday night against Houston.
Kind of interesting if you look at the conference breakdowns of who's looking to make it, and obviously next week we'll be able to dig in much more with the conference tournaments and get a little
Yeah,
bit sharper
yeah,
image of the bracketology. But the SEC projected currently by Joe Lenardi to have 12 teams in. The Big Ten, 10. The Big 12, 8. So half of the Big 12 making it. The Big East, 5. The Mountain West, 4. The prestigious, historic, vaunted Atlantic Coast Conference, 3.
3.
And the
Yeah.
West Coast Conference, 2.
Mm-hmm.
The 3 for the ACC is really pretty shocking.
Yeah. Duke, Clemson. I mean Louisville.
Mm-hmm. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think North Carolina gets in there. I think that's 4. Is it an SEC school that misses? Arkansas loses to Mississippi State. That could be all they need to get knocked out.
Oh, I agree. They're that much. Arkansas is that much on the bubble. Yeah, if they lose to Mississippi State, and it's kind of both sides of the coin, right? Because if they win, it gives them a pretty big boost. That's a make it or
Mm-hmm.
break it game for Arkansas. It really is because they've been so Jekyll and Hyde. This is why they find themselves where they are.
Yeah, the losing streak during the middle of the year is really
Mhm.
pressuring them. They're going to have to get it up and go. Indiana, do you think they knife in there? Because I mean, they're already actively campaigning to get a new coach.
Yeah.
I don't even think making the tournament makes a difference because it's
No.
Indiana. They expect to win.
Yeah. No. It won't. The expectations in Indiana are insane, insane, because they haven't lived up to those expectations in a long, long
No, it's
time.
been a long time.
I mean, a long time, right? Like Illinois has had more recent success, a lot more recent success than Indiana. Michigan basketball, Wisconsin and Iowa
Mhm.
has had more success. You know what I mean? I'm not even listing Michigan State. Like, you know what I mean? Like other Big Ten teams from the Midwest have had more success than Indiana basketball over my lifetime. Like, and I'm
Yeah.
I'm 40. You know what I mean? Like I'm not 22. You know what I mean? Like over my lifetime, Indiana basketball has not really been great. So yeah, they're living off of a deep past that's a long time ago and having expectations that are unrealistic, especially in the NIL era. Football team this year didn't help, because I think it gives them an unrealistic take on what a
What
difference a
you are.
coach can make. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And what Indiana is. Like Bloomington is a really, really, really nice college town, but it is not somewhere where you're going to draw a lot of NIL money overall, not when compared to some of the other big market teams that are out there. I mean, just imagine you're in the same conference as UCLA and USC.
Hmm.
Do you really think you're going to draw the NIL money that LA is going to draw? Really? You know what I mean?
No.
No, it's not happening. It's not happening. So it's like I said, I talked about it, at the beginning of the show here. They got a big game this weekend against Ohio State. I think they got to focus on that. If I'm the coach, that's what I'm talking about. Got to beat Ohio State. It starts there. So they have a terrible record against quad 1 and quad 2 teams this year. And
Mm-hmm.
this quad system did not help Indiana.
No, and yeah, they can't lose that game. Losing to a 17-13 Ohio State. When you hear Ohio State, you think, oh, they're good. It's basketball.
Yeah.
They haven't been terribly good at basketball since Dennis Hobson and Clark Kellogg.
Right. Well, really, even at Ohio State, Ohio State doesn't have the expectations in basketball that Indiana does. But like Ohio State has not.
They're like an old school SEC school.
Yeah.
Basketball fills up some of the dates for tailgate parties before football starts.
Right. Yeah, they're what like Georgia used to be. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there was no real Georgia basketball was a thing, but whatever. It was there. If you got Greg Oden, you could compete, but it didn't really matter much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I got some good games. Xavier versus Providence this weekend, and this is the last hurrah. That's why I'm going over it, because you're not outside. You're going to get this, and then it's a little lull between this and the conference tournaments. You get a few days off. Most of them start on the 12th, which is just 4 days away now. So you're only going to get this weekend, and then it's going to be conference tournament time. So these are the last few games. Nebraska versus Iowa, 12:30 on Fox. That's going to be a good one for the Big Ten. So you got a few of them out here. Like I said, the big ones for me: North Carolina versus Duke, Baylor versus Houston. Huge opportunity for the two down teams there for Baylor and North Carolina. Massive opportunity for both those schools. Get yourself into the tournament with a win on Saturday. That has to be the message for both those schools.
Oh yeah, because this is your last, really your last chance. You always have a chance though, because you could run it and you win the tournament, but
yeah,
it's a lot easier to know you're in there without doing that. If you're K-State, your only chance is you got to win the Big 12 tournament.
Right. Oh yeah. Like that. That's it. Yeah. Ultimately, like Nebraska, they could beat Iowa, and I think still probably their only chance is winning the Big 10 tournament. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, you know what I mean? Like Nebraska, if you beat Iowa and win 2 games in the tournament, you're still on the bubble, Nebraska. But but hey, if you topple Michigan State in the end in a overtime game or some such nonsense, there you go. There's your ticket. You can punch it. But West Virginia versus UCF, also a pretty big game.
Yeah,
they're out there, but this is the last one.
Just one more I'd like to get in as we're winding down here.
Yeah,
it is guaranteed to be the worst regular season of the Bill Self era. Senior day at KU at Fog Allen Fieldhouse. They get number 24 Arizona coming in to take on unranked KU. KU 19-11, 10-9. They're in. They rank really well analytically. They have a bunch of quad 1 wins, but
right,
man, for all the talk about North Carolina being declined, they have a better record than KU. Arizona, also nothing great, 20-10, 14-5. Mm-hmm. Do you think Bill Self gets to the 20 wins, or is this KU team just too flawed and they're kind of in tailspin mode as we're coming down to the end, because they've lost 3 out of 5?
Yeah, I just get that feeling. That they're not going to hit that mark.
I don't see them pulling that.
I don't either, because they are struggling at the wrong moment, and it seems not only right at the end, it's gotten worse all season.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's the problem I have with Kansas, is that hot start, and then everything that followed the hot start was just worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, and you didn't seem to have a lot of answers to fix it along the way.
No, the pieces just don't fit.
Yeah, that's really what it is.
And the only answer of late's been David Coit, your 5'10", shoot first point guard who
Yeah.
they got as a transfer from NIU.
Mm-hmm.
He's been your most electrifying offensive player, and that's not
Yeah.
good.
It's not going to cut it. Yeah, I mean,
No,
it's
and they do okay. If they beat Arizona, it doesn't matter. They're going nowhere.
yeah,
Just not enough.
exactly. Yeah, just not enough. Like you're going to see. I'm telling you, you're going. The SEC is gonna continue on into the tournament and be the talk of the tournament. The SEC is going to have a good record in the tournament because they're categorically better than every other conference. They're going to shell the Big 12 teams. They're going to shell the ACC teams, and they're probably going to beat most of the Big 10 teams. The SEC is going to be the premier conference this year in the tournament. I guarantee it.
Sure,
Just based on, yeah, I mean, just based on the players they have. I mean, like Tennessee is a team. Tennessee, you take the fourth, fifth best team out of the SEC, is a team that would be top two in any conference outside, if not number one in most of the other power conferences. You know what I mean? It's that much of a disparity. I mean, and they're 24-6 on the season. All 6 losses have come in the SEC. You know, so if that doesn't tell you, you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
that should, you know. You just look at that like across the board. You know, Alabama's 23-7 on the year, 5 of those losses in the SEC. Florida, every one of their 4 losses in the SEC. Auburn, every one but one of their losses, which was to Duke
Mm-hmm.
in the SEC. So they've lost. So Auburn has lost 3 games, 2 to SEC opponents and 1 to Duke. The other, the number 2 team could probably be number 1 team in the country if the ACC wasn't down. So there
Yeah.
it
I mean,
is.
it's been an SEC heavy year. You're seeing
Yeah.
the power of money.
Yeah, that's why I think Kentucky's so good, because they struggled earlier in the year. But if you look, like they're 20-10 overall. Eight of the 10 losses have been in the SEC from early conference play.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and teams have more losses this year, like we've talked about. I mean, Duke
mm-hmm.
and Auburn are the exceptions. Most teams, even like here, Arizona, top 24 team, they're at 10 losses. So it
Yeah.
hasn't been a year of dominant records except for 2 teams. And then everybody else is kind of in a scrum. So it's going to create some really exciting tournaments. And, we'll see that starting next week with the conference tournaments.
Real quick, let's touch on one more Big 12 team.
Mm-hmm.
Just before we go, the Iowa State Cyclones, who are on, what are they? They're cratering right now. They're cratering.
Yeah, injuries have hurt them, and they're another team. They've got 2 guys that are gonna score, and if they're not on, it's not a great team. They just
Mm-hmm.
don't have that balance. They don't have the explosivity, and they're not really stretching it out as much. If
Just
anything goes wrong, they're in a lot of trouble.
limping, literally and
Mhm.
figuratively, into the Big 12 tournament right now with recent losses to, Houston, to Oklahoma. Well, to Oklahoma State and to BYU, and a close one against Arizona before they ended up pulling away. Yeah, Iowa State, a team that we talked about, just a couple weeks ago, as maybe being a number 1 or number 2 seed. Finding their way down probably to like the 4, 5, maybe 6 seed round by the time this is all over.
Yeah, I mean, playing K-State, who's been an incredibly disappointing team this year, 15-15, 9-10 in the conference. Iowa State, 75% analytics matchup to win it. They are a strong favorite in this game, but it just doesn't look like this is the team that you thought you were getting at the beginning of the season. Just not enough consistent scoring, and once the injuries started coming in, they really did kind of free fall. That's a good point. Kind of fell apart.
Yeah, they really
Because
did. And then
if it's Curtis Jones, it's Keshawn Gilbert, and after that, pray and hope, because if those guys aren't there, they're in trouble. Iowa State's losing streak and K-State's win streak, when we were talking a few weeks ago, that K-State was the most effective team in basketball over the last 6 games. They
Yeah.
tied together.
Yeah.
Gilbert was hurt. K-State played Iowa State. K-State dominated that game. Then they went on a little bit of a run and thought, oh man, this is the team we were expecting out of K-State. And
Right.
then
Right.
they've stumbled back again towards the end line. So
Yeah. Yeah.
may have just been a good occurrence of events. But Iowa State, if they're healthy, they can beat anyone. If Jones or Gilbert are dinged up, they can lose to anybody.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean it's one of those two player teams. You know what I mean? So that makes sense. Yeah, we'll see how it all shakes out. I don't like their prospects in the Big 12 tournament. You know what I mean? But I get. I mean, I know it's your conference basically that you follow. I think it'll be the most interesting one because I don't know who's going to come out of it. You know what I mean? That's the one that I can't highlight a front runner necessarily.
Well, I mean, I guess the front runner's Houston, but I don't think their style of play bodes well for it, and they don't
That's what
need
I'm
to
saying.
win it.
Yeah.
I'm going to say BYU.
Yeah.
BYU can shoot.
They can.
And in a tight tournament, being able to spread the floor and shoot is going to be an advantage. So, yeah, I'll go with Cougars.
All right, Cougars. Maybe a little underrated on the season, the Cougars. You know what I mean? When you really look at it, probably, yeah, a little underrated. 22-8 out of that conference right now. I mean, yeah, probably a little underrated. And then, real quick, St. Mary's of California. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention St. Mary's on a 9-1 tear. The Gales, that's right, a 9-1 tear in their last 10 games. Of course, not the toughest schedule. Not the toughest schedule, but I would imagine if you just look at their conference standings, like they will sweep their conference. Like they're going to win their conference tournament. You're gonna see St. Mary's in the Big Ten, or sorry, in the Big Dance, not the Big Ten tournament, the Big Dance. Yeah. I don't think they're gonna join the Big Ten anytime soon. Yeah, but yeah, they'll make March, and that's a team like that could be your mid-major this year. That could be your mid-major this year with as good as they're playing right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and they're a modern, traditionally good team. I mean, they're in the tournament a lot, so yeah.
This is true. 27-4. I didn't play one quad one opponent all year, but 3 of the 4 losses are 2 of them are from quad 2 teams. So there you go. 2 of the 4 losses from quad 2 teams. So I mean, they've got a decent, as good as a resume as they could probably put together. Based on where they're at, and 9-1 in their last 10. So they're on fire right now. They're the hottest team in the country outside of maybe Memphis. Penny, I tell you what, Penny Hardaway is doing a crazy good job in Memphis. I'm surprised by how good Memphis is.
Well, that's the city's team. They get behind them, so
they do. All right, well, we'll end on Memphis. How's that sound?
All right.
Unless you got some other parting information.
No, that's good for now, and we'll be ready for the conference tournaments.
All right.
My school, my alma mater, Cleveland State, they had the inside track, but they've kind of stumbled now. They need to win the Horizon League, so that's my last drop in.
Well, my alma mater, Urbana, was closed after COVID. They are not competing in anything.
Well, there you go. You got to cheer for Michigan then.
Yes, I'm rooting for Michigan. Go blue. They don't say go Wolverines. We always say go blue. Wolverines is too long, too many syllables. All right. Well, that does it for me and for Gerald Bentley. This is Spotlight on College Basketball. Adios.
There you go. We'll see you. Thanks.